acceptance ceremony of the marriage proposal, during which they gave me a calabash cup filled with palm wine. Tradition demanded that the bride drink a little palm wine and take the remaining to the groom as a sign of acceptance of the marriage proposal. She may drink and take the remaining to her father in this case. It symbolizes a complete rejection of the marriage proposal. I complied with the forced will of my father by drinking half and taking the remaining to Mr. Eddie. All eyes were on me as they considered this ceremony's climax. I tempted my spirit to gulp down the entire gulp of wine and break the calabash, but I could not muster enough courage to do that, given the friendship that had unexpectedly flowed between the two families. There were mixed feelings when it was time for my father to bless us and hand me over to his father on his behalf. I was as embarrassed as ever because his words sounded as if he had invested a fortune in my head and was patiently waiting in great expectation of a happy return. As was the custom, my people were supposed to present my endowment gifts, which I could carry to my husband's house as part of my contribution to family house furnishing. As per my dowry, in his infinite selfishness, my father bragged about his plan to endow me abundantly with various household materials. Despite my not paying attention to his gimmicks, he told Mr. Eddie that he will send those properties to Onitsha right after the planned general wine carrying, scheduled to come up in 3 market days. Mr. Eddie told him not to buy anything because he already had everything necessary for a home. It worked for him because my presumed husband, in his exuberant nature, claimed that I didn't need to bring anything with me as he will take me shopping tomorrow morning to make a new wardrobe. I, however, picked a few of my belongings, which I stuffed into a Ghana must-go bag. My heart kept pounding as if I were a horse led to the slaughter. I couldn't explain or get myself to flow with what seemed to be an inexplicable manipulation. Why would someone of such a high social class come from Lagos to marry an unknown village girl? That was the million-naira question neither my father nor mother had bothered to ask. Finally, it was time for them to depart with the sacrificial lamb they had just purchased with my father's blessings, and a unanimous accord with my relatives, who got a bottle of hot drink each as a take-home package. The only person who remained unexcited was my mother, who had wished she could have a say in all this mess. Despite my anger, I comprehended her predicaments and assured myself that none of my children will ever walk this path. They reminded me several times that it was time to go, but with one excuse or the other, I kept delaying the inevitable. I knew no protest or resistance could make a difference at that point. I asked my younger sister, Nneka, to help put my Ghana must-go bag in Mr. Eddie's car, as I was ashamed of bringing such a notorious poor man's bag, made from matted woven nylon, as my only belonging into a presumed rich home. However, I still doubt the genuineness of Mr. Eddie's opulence or supposed wealth. All the women present joined our visitors and started singing an accompanying song, usually sung for a moment like this. It was the norm for the bride to dance joyfully to the music tune raised by the women as they accompanied her to the groom's homestead or car. I was not ready to dance, so I sluggishly worked as the women sang and danced until we got to Mr. Eddie's car, parked in front of my father's house. One of the women opened the back door and I sneaked into the back seat, but Mr. Eddie objected and asked me to sit in the front next to him as the madam of the house. It was a long drive to Onitsha, passing through Enugu and joining the express highway to Onitsha. It was my very first time going that far away from home. I had heard and read of Enugu as the capital of eastern Nigeria, Anambra State, and then Enugu State, but I had never visited it. I must have fallen asleep along the way as I didn't even know when we passed the 9th mile corner where I hoped to buy some okpa for my breakfast the next day. We were already at Oka when I woke up and it was already dark. For one reason or another, I was still expecting to arrive at the main house with a massive gate and security men. On getting to Onitsha, we drove into a compound with a 6-flat 2-story building. We disembarked and followed his father up to their apartment on the second floor. His mother and two sisters sat over a big bowl of yam and beans, watching television as they ate. They stopped for a while to welcome us and ask about our journey. A few neighbors came to greet me, while others didn't even know that a marriage ceremony had just happened under their noses. We all complimented on the safe journey and the successful ceremony. I asked Mr. Eddie Best if I should go down and get my bag from the car, but he motioned me with a wave of the hand not to worry. I realized we were home and that my great expectations might as well be an illusion. After about an hour, he stood up, wished his parents good night, and asked me to come along. We ended up in a hotel a few minutes away from their house. Thank God I came on this journey without believing in my expectations or perceptions, as my father or his cohorts presumed. As we drove to the hotel, I reminded Mr. Eddie, whom I still don't know how to address, that my bag was still in the boot of his car. Though he calls me baby, I didn't know if he meant I was his baby girl or baby child, or if I should address him as a baby. When we got to the hotel, I asked if I should wait in the car or come with him. "No, baby, come with me," he said. "Leave your bag in the boot. This hotel is not an appropriate place to carry such a local bag." I stepped out and walked into the hotel with him like a mumu. Fool. Denying that I'm not a local mugu is like denying the obvious. He asked for his keys at the reception as if he were talking to his houseboy. As we took the key, a lady from nowhere rushed him, snatched it from his hands. "Is this the bushmeat you went to the village to buy? Eddie, you're a shameless idiot. Is she not underage? Just look at her," she said. I didn't know she was talking to me until she took 2 steps forward and pushed me. "I'm talking to you, village Dundee. If you know what is good for you, you better pack your dirty self and return to the village immediately. If not, this town will be too small for both of us. Auntie, please talk to Mr. Eddie. I will gladly leave him for you if he can take me back to my parents." She looked at me again and raised her hand to slap me, but my reflex action was very prompt, as I quickly seized her hand in the air, brought it down with a left twist, and pinned her to the floor. I looked into her frightened eyes and said, "Auntie, I'm a complete village girl from Ezambo, Jokwase. Get your information right." I stood up, leaving her on the floor with a twisted arm. "Next time, Auntie, watch before you leap." I was deeply perplexed at the lady's actions and wondered if our women had grown so wild as to fight for a man or beg a man to marry them. That was my first bad experience in my new environment. I looked at my presumed husband, who seemed to be watching a Nollywood movie. He looked back at me with warm approval and said, "Let's go, baby," as if nothing had happened. I wondered why and how we ended up in a hotel instead of his house, or at least his parents' house, or our first day of marriage. Maybe he owns the hotel and lives in the penthouse. I fantasized I was wrong. We ended up in a room like many others. We had a big family bed, a plasma TV hanging on the wall, and the air conditioning was blowing in full swing. He dropped his handset, reached out and grabbed me in a tight embrace. He pulled up my face and wanted to kiss me, but I quickly escaped his grip. "Uncle, I'm not one of the prostitutes sitting downstairs, please." He let go for a moment, then he sat on the bed and ordered me to come and sit next to him. My entire self, physical and spiritual, was trembling, as if a hypermalaria parasite suddenly hit me. He started undressing before my eyes, and I ran into the bathroom and locked the door behind me. My decision to run and hide inside the toilet was an impulsive defense mechanism. It wasn't premeditated because I didn't factor it into this relationship, at least for now. I had expected Eddie to wait and gradually convince me to accept this strange relationship, not only because I was still a minor, but because we didn't have any form of courtship. I can understand if I had been in a relationship like some of my age mates who had had a previous sexual experience. I had imagined a situation where he would sit me down and at least appreciate me for still being a virgin at this age. I vividly remember that the man who introduced my father to him visited a few days earlier to confirm the day they were coming. He had persistently asked my father if he was sure I was still a virgin. I didn't attach any importance to that because, as far as I was concerned, it was customary for a girl my age to be a virgin. I had expected Eddie to open the toilet door forcefully, so I sat with my back, pushing on the door to resist any forceful attempt to open it. I heard the door bang some minutes later, but imagined it could be a prank. He whispered some old tune and made a few telephone calls. After about an hour, nothing happened. There was no way I could look out to see what he was doing because there was no keyhole in the door. I wondered why tears refused to come, despite the shock gripping me when he started pulling off his clothes right before me. At that point, I recalled what my mother had told me about a few days before that sad day. She had subtly said that if not for my father's objection, she would have taken me to Mamozo's house to help open my womanhood channel using traditional methods. However, she claimed it was an age-long conventional ritual which required my husband's consent. I was gradually falling asleep when I heard a knock on the door. "Baby, baby," but I didn't answer. "Adaeze," he called out again. "Sir," I responded. "Please come out and go to bed. I promise not to touch you. Inugo, do you hear me? How can I trust you, sir? Please let me sleep here, I beg of you." "No, my dear, it's only human to want to consummate a marriage right after you come home from the ceremony. But I understand your plight. Now take my words as an oath. I will not touch you, so please open the door gradually. Peep out and see that I'm in my pajamas. I've also gone down to bring your bag." I didn't know what to believe, but he got a second chance. One thing is sure, I would not allow him to rape me. So I opened the door and saw him lying on the bed. I came out and sat on the plastic chair next to the bed. He stood up and excused himself, saying, "I will go into the toilet to ease myself, but I will stay there until you finish putting on your pajamas and call me to come out." He kept his promise and went into the toilet to ease himself. After about 20 minutes, he called me in the usual baby thing. "Are you done?" "Yes, sir," I responded. He came out and saw me still seated in the same spot and wearing my dress just like he had left me. I smiled and said, "How can a big man like you sleep on the floor while I sleep on the bed? Please sleep on the bed while I manage the floor. I want you to be as comfortable as possible." "Sir, where I come from, it's not done." I opened my bag, pulled out a wrapper, threw it on the floor, took a pillow from the many on the bed, and stretched myself on the floor. Eddie stood there perplexed, probably wondering what to do next. I can't explain how I later got on the bed, but I woke up and found him beside me. I jumped up and checked my panties and dress, which were all intact. Without hesitation, I slipped my fingers under my panties to check if it was wet, but nothing seemed to have happened. I turned to look at him and he smiled as if to say, "How can you trust me if you don't trust yourself?" "Good morning, sir," I greeted. "Please, how did I end up here? You must have been too tired from a long day journey back to Onitsha. But the extra stress you rained on yourself from the reception to when we entered the room, I picked you up from the floor and took you to the bed without waking you. You did mutter some words though without opening your eyes. Baby, I'm sorry for what happened last night. It was unintentional, and I do not want us to argue over a non-issue. Nugo, you hear me? Baby, remember, I wore that thick traditional dress all day and sweated like a goat in your father's house. When we arrived at the hotel, what that lady did at the reception sent waves of heat and anger running all over my body. The adrenaline and bile fluid put together made the situation worse. I was holding back my hands from giving that girl a dirty slap, but thank God you gave her the lesson of her life. The moment we got into the hotel room, the only desire in my mind was to take off those heavy clothes and throw myself into the shower. But before I could say jack, he ran into the bathroom and locked the door. The rest of the story was beyond my imagination. I even went down to the car against my will to bring your bag, hoping you might decide to release yourself from the prison compartment of a toilet, explained, laughing so hard that I too started laughing with him. "I'm sorry, sir, but my mother taught me to flee when a man removes his clothes before me. I sure would have run out of the room, but I didn't want to embarrass you or attract public attention." "Can I ask you a question, sir?" "Please ask me any questions that might help clear your mind." "Okay, sir, thanks for the permission. If I may ask, is it not an abomination to take your wife from her father's house to the same hotel room you have been sleeping in with your girlfriends You have a point, baby. My house is in Lagos. My father's house couldn't be more conducive, as you might have witnessed in the few minutes we spent there. I can boldly tell you that it is not a shy thing to do if your house is conducive enough to guarantee privacy. If not for your uncle's complete refusal to collaborate on our first visit, he continued, we intended to lift you directly to Lagos with a brief stopover at Benin City. The night traffic proved not sufficiently safe. That would not have been appropriate because you would not have met my parents. Your father didn't consider that, but I was happy your uncle refused to bow to our youthful exuberances. If I may ask again, sir, since you have made so much money and fame in Lagos, why are your parents still living in that clumsy apartment? Baby, if I should be sincere, I've never thought of that because I was busy taking care of my business in Lagos. I hardly came home even for Christmas. That would not be true either, he continued. I had been busy constructing castles for my parents in my head without putting anything concrete on the ground. Should I call it a product of peer influence or neglect on my part? Sir, I think it has been a misplaced priority. Not minding that I'm a girl who would eventually get married. My foremost concern was that I must build and furnish a house for my parents before they sadly and prematurely sold me out into early slavery in the disguise of marriage. I wasn't even thinking of my brothers, whose duty it should have been to rebuild my father's house. Baby, I'm amazed at your thoughtfulness. Are you sure you're just 16 years old? You have just awakened me from slumber and put my mind to work. Do you know that most of my friends, when they visit home, drive straight to the hotel and see their parents from their hotel room? One last question, sir. Do you know that the fifth commandment is the only commandment with a promise? A phone call interrupted our discussion, resulting in reciprocal shouts and the exchange of abusive words on both ends. The lady on the other end kept raining curses on him, claiming that she heard he had gone home to his village to marry. So you think I'm only good as your bedmate, Abi? This Lagos will not contain both of us. Mr. Eddie, if you know what is good for you, leave her there in the village. Come back to Lagos and finish what you started because I am pregnant. And of course it is for you. He kept calm for a while, but at a point, he lost his patience and returned every abuse with even more abusive words. I didn't dare question him about the matter at hand, but adding this to what happened at the hotel reception last night, I started getting a clearer picture of who he was and the war ahead if this marriage must hold. He tried to cover up what had just transpired over the phone, forgetting that it was so loud that I had every detail of that discussion. He returned to my last question as if it were an unfinished tissue. Baby, please excuse my lapses over things we studied back then in Sunday school. I don't remember the order in which they wrote those 10 commandments. Which one is precisely the fifth commandment? You're not alone, I replied. Many Christians have the same problem. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Do you now understand the promise? None of the other commandments came with a promise. Baby Eddie muttered, now I fully understand the message you were trying to convey. So, if I honor my parents with a pleasant home for their comfort, I will also receive a reward from God for keeping His command. Thanks for this insightful lesson. I was busy contemplating how to ask for an explanation for what seemed to be a keg of gunpowder waiting to ignite when he came up with an idea on how to kickstart our day. Baby, I will go to the reception to use their POS, withdraw some money, arrange breakfast, and bring it up on my return. In the meantime, you would have time to take your bath, rub your cream without me seeing your naked body, and dress up because we will go shopping for you right after breakfast. When I come up, I will knock on the door thrice and call your name twice. Please lock the door properly. Please do not open the door if you do not get these signs. He didn't wait for my response and zoomed off, leaving the key on the table.